This screen recording provides instructions about writing a history paper. In preparing to write your paper, you should begin by reading the comments on your thesis outline. These have been emailed to you, so you should check the email address that you used to register for My History Lab. So read the comments and revise your thesis outline accordingly. So take into account the suggestions that were made and revise the thesis outline. You do not need to submit the revised outline, just use it as you're writing your paper. Once you've done that, you should gather together your sources. Make sure that you have your thesis outline, the Hansen article, the textbook, that you're online so you can access the descriptions of the American Graduation Initiative. And then you want to quickly skim, or if you felt that you didn't read them carefully enough the first time around, you should reread your sources. And if you need to, gather further evidence for your outline. So there may be portions of your outline, and this was true for a lot of students, that they needed to add more evidence. So many of you will be doing this step where you'll be inserting more evidence into your outline. So you have all your materials together, find yourself a nice quiet place, give yourself a good chunk of time, and start to write. One piece of advice that I gave in quite a few of the thesis outlines was that students need to answer all parts of the question, and you need to do this both in the thesis and the paper. So this is a question that has more than one piece, so you're doing more than one thing in this paper. So here's the full question, and this is the first part of the question. So the first thing you're going to need to do in the thesis and the paper is compare and contrast Hamilton's and Jefferson's opinion about the purpose of education. Now, you'll need to summarize each man's vision of education in your thesis. So try and do that concisely. And then in the body of the paper, you'll explain it and provide evidence. I suggest that you have one paragraph for each of these people, one for Hamilton and one for Jefferson. I know some students were doing it in one paragraph, but it ended up a little bit confusing. So I suggest that you have one for Hamilton and one for Jefferson. The second part of the question asks you to talk about the American Graduation Initiative and whether or not it adopts a Hamiltonian or Jeffersonian vision. Now, this question needs to be directly answered in the thesis, and it needs to be explained in the body of the paper. And here you should be using evidence from the White House website and also from President Obama's speech. And finally, the last piece of the question asks for your opinion about whether this is the right direction for community colleges. Now, you don't want to just do this in the conclusion because it's actually part of the question. So it should be in the body of the paper and provide some reasoning, some rationale for your opinion. And again, this also needs to be summarized in the thesis. In each of the body paragraphs, you need to have one main idea or argument that helps prove the thesis or helps argue the thesis. And that main idea should be stated in the first sentence of the paragraph. So remember, keep in mind that history papers are different than other disciplines. And in a history paper, we always want our arguments right up front. There are no secrets. We want to put our argument right up front. So the first sentence of the paragraph is going to state the main idea or argument of that paragraph. Now, I know you might be tempted to build suspense or build up your argument and then state it at the end, but that's not the format for writing a history paper. The body of the paragraph then provides further explanation of the idea. So you're going to expand upon that topic sentence and explain the argument in more detail. And you will also be providing evidence for that argument. And as we talked about in Thinking with the Outline, you need to provide evidence from a variety of different sources. So make sure that you're using each of the sources that has been provided for this paper. And do not use sources that were not provided for the paper. What I really want you to do is carefully read the sources provided. Some students went to the web and cut and pasted things from the web, and that's not okay. You need to carefully read the information that you were provided with. All right, so make sure that you're carefully reading those sources and that you are using them in the paper. When you use another author's words, when you have a direct quote, you must put quotation marks around it and then cite that quote. So you need to tell your reader, essentially by putting quotation marks around something, you're telling your reader, I didn't write this. These aren't my words. These were written by somebody else, and here's where you can find those words. If you want to go look it up and read more information or read that author, here's where you can find that. When you don't put quotation marks around it, it's as if you're trying to trick the reader and pretend that those are your words. So that is plagiarism, and that's a form of cheating. So it's really important that you always put quotation marks directly around words written by another person. You do not need to provide a works cited page, a bibliography, or formal footnotes. Normally you would have to provide these things, but in this class we didn't have time to go over how to format a works cited page or bibliography or footnotes. So in lieu of that, we're going to use an aspect of Chicago style citations, and you're simply going to put the author's name in brackets following the quote. So here's an example. Keene argues that President Taylor, quote, put national unity above regional loyalty. So this is a phrase directly taken from the textbook. It may look short, but even a phrase of that length, if those are not your words, you need to put quotation marks around them. And the page from the book is just cited there. So if you cut and paste work off the internet, or if you copy directly from the textbook or from the Hansen article or any other source, without putting quotation marks in a citation, you will earn a 0 on the paper. Plagiarism is a very serious form of cheating. So please just use your own words. Finally, style and grammar. Style and grammar form a small portion of the grade, so when you are writing, you need to be clear and direct. We're not all Tolstoy, we're not all great writers, but what we can expect of ourselves is to be clear. So you want your reader, me in this case, to be able to understand your arguments. So make sure that you're being direct. And also, one of the easiest things you can do here to improve your paper is simply running your spelling and grammar check before submitting the paper. So once you're all done, run your spelling and grammar check. A lot of students skip this step and it hurts their grade. So please make sure to do that. Papers that are difficult to understand because of grammar will earn a lower grade, in part because style and grammar are a small portion of the grade, but also because your arguments and ideas are difficult to understand if the grammar is poor. All right, so gather your materials, get your evidence together, and start writing your papers.